Name somebody that's always eating up the profit.
August 16th, 2024, Houston, Texas. Carmen Denise Peterson was found murdered in her apartment, located on FM 1960 Road, West in Northwest Harris County. She had been shot multiple times in her sleep. Her bedroom window was shattered, yet nothing was stolen. No signs of a struggle. No forced entry at the front door. Just a lifeless body and questions that still demand answers. Carmen was in the process of divorcing her husband. Was this a coincidence or a clue? Despite ongoing investigations, no arrests have been made. Authorities stated the attack was personal. But how personal? And why would someone want her dead? The killer didn't take money, electronics, or valuables. They came in quietly, executed the act with precision, and left undetected. Who knew her routine? Who had access to her apartment or knowledge of its layout? Did she sense she was being watched? With no witnesses, no suspects, and no closure, this case forces us to ask, was this a crime of passion, a targeted execution, or something far more sinister?
Family members of a woman who was murdered in her Northwest Harris County apartment are hoping an arrest in that case is coming soon. According to the Harris County Sheriff's Office, the 37-year-old victim was found shot to death. ABC 13's Alex Bozargian joins us live from the apartment complex where she died. And Alex, has the Sheriff's Office identified a suspect?
Unfortunately, Tom, no. We reached out to the Sheriff's Office tonight and asked them for any updates, whether there was a suspect or at the very least a person of interest, but all they could tell us was the investigation was active and that detectives were working it. Now, family members think that the person who killed Carmen Peterson was close to her, and they say that's because of the nature of the murder. They say that she was actually sleeping in her bed when the suspect snuck in and shot her.
In this investigation, we'll dig into Carmen's life, her relationships, her legal filings, and the timeline leading to her murder. We'll analyze the crime scene, the investigation, the gaps, and what law enforcement has, or hasn't revealed. This isn't just about what happened to Carmen. It's about who wanted her silenced, and why. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Carmen Denise Peterson was born on October 8, 1986, in Houston, Texas. She lived a relatively quiet life centered around family and caregiving. Known affectionately as Granny among her close family and friends, she had a nurturing reputation and was often relied upon by those around her for emotional and practical support. She worked as a caregiver, a profession that reflected her personality. Responsible, attentive, and devoted, Carmen was a mother of 4 children, all of whom were central to her daily life. She resided in an apartment located in the 4200 block of FM 1960 Road, West in Northwest Harris County. At the time of her death, she was still legally married to Eric Pate Jr., though they were living separately and undergoing a legal divorce process. Eric was the father of all 4 of her children. Her home was known to be a private, secure space. It was a multi-unit apartment complex, accessible by secured entries and surrounded by residential units with standard surveillance in place. Despite this, her life ended violently within its walls. In March 2024, just 5 months before her death, Carmen formally filed for divorce from her husband, Eric Pate Jr. The filing marked a clear legal boundary between the couple, although they had reportedly been dealing with domestic tensions for an extended period prior to this decision. Sources close to Carmen, including family members, confirmed that she had shared concerns about Eric's controlling behavior and emotional instability during their time together. While no restraining order was on file or made public, multiple sources stated that Carmen had voiced safety concerns in private conversations. It remains unclear whether those concerns were ever reported formally to law enforcement. There are no official records indicating that any reports of domestic abuse, stalking, or threats were submitted by Carmen to police during or after the separation. Despite the ongoing divorce process, Carmen and Eric continued to co-parent their 4 children, which required some level of communication and coordination between them. This shared responsibility may have led to occasional in-person encounters or discussions, even after Carmen began distancing herself legally and physically from Eric. Carmen's family later stated that she was attempting to rebuild her life and protect her children from ongoing tensions. However, the presence of ongoing conflict, coupled with a lack of legal protections like a protective order or public documentation of threats, created a vulnerable environment in which she continued to live and parent. Between March and August 2024, no publicly confirmed interventions were made to monitor or safeguard Carmen's well-being. There is no public record of welfare checks, police reports, or other documented domestic disturbances. Whether or not Carmen feared imminent danger is not known, but multiple family members said she had told them she did not feel safe. The divorce process had not been finalized by the time of her death. This legal limbo often creates ambiguity in law enforcement response, as the couple was still technically married. Without a court order establishing separation boundaries, law enforcement may have had limited legal grounds to intervene or act upon informal complaints. Carmen reportedly tried to maintain routine and privacy, keeping a low profile and focusing on work and her children. Her apartment remained a central location in her daily life, and from all indications, she expected it to be a safe space. However, this sense of routine may have made her movements and schedule predictable, a vulnerability in situations where threats may be stalking or premeditating an act of violence. Was her apartment complex equipped with working surveillance cameras? Did Carmen change her routines or make efforts to relocate in the months after filing for divorce? Could the killer have learned her schedule and sleeping habits in advance? Did anyone in her inner circle notice suspicious behavior or vehicles around the property before the murder? In the early hours of August 16, 2024, 37-year-old Carmen Denise Peterson was shot to death inside her apartment. According to authorities, the killer entered the home through a shattered patio window. Inside, Carmen was found in bed, fatally wounded with multiple gunshot wounds. She had been asleep when the attack occurred.
Family members of a woman who was murdered in her Northwest Harris County apartment are hoping an arrest in that case is coming soon. According to the Harris County Sheriff's Office, the 37-year-old victim was found shot to death. ABC 13's Alex Bozargian joins us live from the apartment complex where she died. And Alex, has the Sheriff's Office identified a suspect?
Unfortunately, Tom, no. We reached out to the Sheriff's Office tonight and asked them for any updates, whether there was a suspect or at the very least a person of interest, but all they could tell us was the investigation was active and that detectives were working it. Now, family members think that the person who killed Carmen Peterson was close to her, and they say that's because of the nature of the murder. They say that she was actually sleeping in her bed when the suspect snuck in and shot her.
It's hard.
Two women without a sister and without answers.
We walked in through the front door and
found her like that.
Found her dead.
It was heartbreaking and devastating. Like, I never thought that, I would walk in on my sister, just laying in the bed, murdered.
With that many bullet wounds.
The tragic series of events unfolding inside Carmen Peterson's Northwest Harris County apartment. Martha Stargill says she and her sister Kimberly White got worried after hearing Peterson never showed up for work on August 16th. Investigators say when she was found, her patio window had been smashed in.
She was shot over 5 times. So it was personal, nothing was taken. It's somebody that had motive to kill her because they hated her so much.
According to court records, Peterson had filed for divorce from her husband of 15 years in March. The couple share children together.
She was mostly stressed about just being safe.
We did reach out to the Harris County Sheriff's Office about any possible suspects, but they had no new information to share.
We're watching over our shoulders every day. We don't know if this person that we have in mind did it. We don't know if they're coming to our home to kill us or the kids safe or... we just don't know. It's hard. It's been over a month. And
the wait for justice is utterly agonizing for Peterson's sisters. They say to anyone out there watching who may know something.
Just speak out. Just for the sake of...
There were no signs of forced entry at the front of the apartment. Nothing inside appeared stolen. Her purse was untouched. Electronics and jewelry remained in place. The crime scene suggested no signs of a struggle, indicating Carmen never had a chance to react. She was likely killed while unconscious or just waking up. The children were not present in the apartment at the time of the attack. Investigators quickly ruled out burglary as a motive. The Harris County Sheriff's Office stated that the killing appeared targeted. Authorities collected ballistic evidence and fingerprints from the scene. However, they did not publicly confirm whether security footage was obtained from nearby apartments or street surveillance. No suspects have been named. No arrests have been made. Who knew the apartment's layout and Carmen's sleep schedule? Why would a killer enter through a window if they could have used the front door? Was a silencer used to avoid waking neighbors or drawing attention? Could the crime scene have been manipulated to appear as a clean hit? Carmen had recently filed for divorce from her husband, Eric Pate Jr., just months before the murder. According to family members, Carmen had reportedly expressed fear for her safety. Yet there was no known restraining order or documented history of domestic violence available to the public. Following the murder, local news outlets such as ABC 13 and KHOE reported briefly on the case. However, after the first few weeks, media coverage dwindled. The story failed to maintain headlines, and no new updates were shared by law enforcement. There was no follow-up press conference or public disclosure of investigative progress. No warrant information, suspect sketches, or surveillance clips were released. Despite the lack of public updates, Carmen's family continued to press for answers. They held vigils, spoke to local reporters, and called on the community to demand justice. The case was added to the gun violence memorial, where candles were lit in her name and tributes shared online. Yet even with community support, there were no breakthroughs reported. Were Carmen's text messages, phone calls, or social media accounts reviewed for threats or warning signs? Did authorities conduct forensic analysis on the broken window and surrounding surfaces for DNA or trace evidence? Was there digital evidence, like security footage from neighbors, that wasn't disclosed to the public? No further announcements were made by the Harris County Sheriff's Office. The case remains unsolved. Approximately 2 months after Carmen Peterson was murdered, her estranged husband, Eric Pate Jr., was also killed. On Halloween night, Pate was shot in the garage of his residence in northwest Harris County. At the time of the shooting, his children were inside the house. According to reports, a suspect was seen fleeing the scene wearing a Michael Myers mask, a common costume during Halloween. There were no signs of robbery or forced entry. The shooter did not attempt to enter the house. No altercation was reported. It was a direct and focused shooting. Pate died at the scene before paramedics arrived.
At 4, we're getting new reaction to a deadly Halloween night shooting involving a suspect who may have been wearing a Michael Myers mask.
And today we learned the victim's estranged wife was also murdered just 2 months ago. Last night's shooting happened on Hawks Nest Drive off I-45. That's in North Harris County. It's also where we find Jason Miles this afternoon, live with the latest for us. Jason?
It's definitely a creepy story when you factor in the whole Michael Myers mask thing, he being the villain, of course, from those Halloween movies. Inside that garage you see behind me is where I'm told first responders found the victim shortly after neighbors heard multiple shots. It was after trick-or-treaters were done for the night, according to neighbors, when silence was broken along Hawks Nest Drive.
I was in my room and I heard about 3 or 4 shots, and it was loud enough that I thought it was my backdoor neighbors, but it was over there.
Over there is where investigators say the victim, identified this afternoon as 38-year-old Eric Pate, was pronounced dead inside his open garage.
Things like that don't happen in this neighborhood.
Investigators told us last night that the possible suspect had on a very recognizable disguise.
We're told it was possibly a Michael Myers mask from the Halloween movie.
Pate's death comes about 2.5 months after his estranged wife was fatally shot shortly after we're told she moved out of this house. Family identifies her as 37-year-old Carmen Peterson and shared several photos with us, adding that they believe Pate was involved in her murder. The couple had 4 children, 2 of whom were inside the home at the time of their father's death. Right now, investigators are reviewing any available surveillance video of what neighbors hope was not a random crime.
I'd like to think that someone's not just randomly going out and killing anyone that's outside, but it still makes you want to stay inside a little bit.
And according to court records, Carmen Peterson filed for divorce from Eric Pate back in March of this year. Despite her murder in August, the case, though, appears to have still been active. Now, of course, the Harris County Sheriff's Office investigating both murders. Reporting live from North Harris County, Jason Miles, KHOU 11.
Investigators confirmed that Pate had been named as a person of interest in Carmen's case, but had not been charged or publicly accused prior to his death. Law enforcement has not confirmed whether the two murders are connected. Both cases remain open, with no suspects identified. Was a Halloween mask simply a disguise or a message? Who would have had knowledge of Eric Pate's location and schedule? Was this a revenge killing by someone close to Carmen? Or was this a cleanup hit to remove a person of interest? Authorities have not stated if ballistic evidence from Pate's shooting was compared to that of Carmen's murder. No forensic or digital links have been disclosed. No suspect description beyond the mask has been provided. To date, no person has been arrested in connection with either murder. The sheriff's office has labeled both as target attacks, but no details tying them together officially have been released. Family and community members continue to believe that both murders are related and demand further action. Are the killers still within the victim's social circles? Was law enforcement slow to act on early warnings from Carmen? Did authorities lose potential evidence due to lack of immediate follow-through? Why haven't digital footprints, call logs, or third-party devices been used to develop leads? In August 2024, Carmen Denise Peterson, a 37-year-old mother of four, was found shot to death in her Northwest Harris County apartment. 2 months later, her estranged husband, Eric Pate Jr., was also gunned down, executed in his own garage by a mass shooter. Both murders remain unsolved. No suspects have been named. No charges filed. And despite striking similarities between the two killings, law enforcement has not publicly confirmed any connection. The timeline raises urgent questions. Was Carmen's killing the result of a domestic dispute? Was Eric targeted in retaliation, or silenced before charges could be brought? Could both murders have been carried out by the same person or group? These remain open-ended concerns in a case shrouded in silence. Both murders occurred in what are typically considered safe personal spaces, a bedroom and a private garage. Both were carried out in a calculated, efficient manner. In neither case was robbery suspected. Both victims had ties to the same family. And both cases remain unsolved with no official public update from investigators about any connection. Was someone silencing potential suspects? Could both murders be the work of the same person or group? Was this part of a larger domestic violence pattern ignored by law enforcement? These are central questions that continue to circulate among the public and the victims' families. If Pate was indeed involved in Carmen's murder, his own death could have been retaliation, or a way to eliminate someone with crucial knowledge of the initial crime. Alternatively, if someone else had a vested interest in keeping both victims silent, the possibility of a third party becomes more likely. Law enforcement has not confirmed a motive in either case. No arrest has been made for either homicide. This raises questions about the scope and depth of the investigation. Were digital records, such as text messages, GPS data, or phone calls, retrieved? Were any ballistic tests conducted between the two crime scenes? Was the same caliber of weapon used in both shootings? These technical questions remain unanswered in public documentation. If both murders are connected, it would point to a highly targeted campaign against individuals from the same domestic unit. The possibility of a pattern being ignored or deliberately overlooked cannot be ruled out. In the days following Carmen's murder, members of her family, particularly her mother, spoke openly with local media outlets, expressing their frustration with how the investigation was being handled. They described Carmen as a protective mother who had previously expressed fears for her safety. Her loved ones demanded transparency from law enforcement, pressing for answers about what evidence had been collected and why no suspect had been arrested. Vigils were held in Carmen's honor. Her community gathered in mourning, lighting candles and speaking publicly about the need for justice. The case was briefly covered by regional news outlets, but without regular updates from investigators, public focus began to shift elsewhere. When Eric Pate was killed, interest in the case briefly resurfaced. The unusual circumstances, his death on Halloween, the shooter's use of a Michael Myers mask, added a chilling theatrical element to the crime that caught public attention. However, as with Carmen's case, the investigation quickly went quiet. Police acknowledged the murder, but gave no official comment on whether it was connected to his estranged wife's killing. In the months that followed, both cases faded from mainstream media cycles. The lack of arrests and the absence of public statements from investigators further eroded trust in law enforcement. The victims' families, particularly Carmen's, have continued to call for renewed focus, but their pleas have not produced visible results. The public's perception of how these cases have been handled reflect a broader concern that certain types of violence, especially those involving domestic connections, are not prioritized until it is too late. Community members have questioned whether more could have been done to protect Carmen in the months before her death or to investigate Pate's role afterward. Why hasn't the community pressure led to more progress? Is the system failing victims like Carmen? What does this say about domestic violence investigations? These are not rhetorical questions. They strike at the core of how society treats patterns of domestic conflict, especially when early warning signs are present. Carmen's family believes she was targeted due to ongoing personal conflict. They also believe law enforcement had a window of opportunity to act on that suspicion, which passed without intervention. When Eric was later murdered, it reinforced a belief that the system failed twice. First by not protecting Carmen, and then by not preventing Eric's own violent end. Both victims left behind children. Those children are now without their mother and father. The people responsible remain unknown. And with each day that passes, the likelihood of charges being filed becomes less certain. The murder of Carmen Denise Peterson on August 16, 2024, and the subsequent killing of her estranged husband, Eric Pate Jr., on October 31, 2024, have left behind a trail of silence, suspicion, and unresolved questions. Though law enforcement labeled Carmen's murder as a targeted attack, no arrests have been made in either case. The pattern, the proximity in time, and the personal connections have forced many to question who stood to gain from these executions, and why has no one been held accountable? Was the shooter someone from Carmen's inner circle? Carmen's murder showed clear signs of familiarity. The shooter entered through her bedroom patio window, a move that suggested prior knowledge of her living space and routine. She was shot multiple times while sleeping. There was no sign of forced entry at the front door, no struggle, and no property taken. Investigators quickly ruled out robbery as a motive. Such precision and the lack of disturbance point towards someone who knew Carmen personally. Friends and family had previously reported that she feared for her safety after filing for divorce from Eric Pate Jr. in March 2024. Though no restraining order was on record, multiple sources claimed she had voiced concerns about harassment and intimidation during the separation period. This brings into question whether the killer had a personal motive, possibly stemming from jealousy, control, or unresolved domestic tension. If the killer was from her circle, why haven't authorities released a list of persons of interest? Were those closest to her interrogated thoroughly, or merely cleared without full investigation? Why did law enforcement call it targeted, yet offer no suspects? The term targeted was used publicly by Harris County Sheriff's Office, indicating that Carmen's killing wasn't random. Yet despite this conclusion, they released no suspect description, named no persons of interest, and offered no updates to the public beyond the initial press release. The definition of a targeted hit implies intention, planning, and motive, yet nothing was disclosed to the public about who, specifically, may have had a motive. If police had enough reason to believe the attack was deliberate, why hasn't that translated into any arrest, indictment, or even a public plea for specific witnesses? This contradiction, labeling it targeted while keeping all suspect data sealed, raises questions about the pace and scope of the investigation. Were authorities protecting the identity of a known suspect pending further evidence? Or was the label used prematurely without solid grounding? Who had something to gain from both deaths? 2 months after Carmen's murder, Eric Pate Jr. was shot and killed in his garage on Hawks Nest Drive on Halloween night, October 31, 2024. According to law enforcement and local reports, the suspect wore a Michael Myers mask, executed the shooting, and fled the scene. Two of Eric's children were inside the home at the time. No items were stolen. Eric's killing appeared just as calculated and specific as Carmen's. It occurred in his personal space, involved a mass shooter, and bore the hallmark of premeditation. Importantly, Eric had never been publicly named as a suspect in Carmen's case, but family members had privately expressed concern over his behavior prior to her death. If Eric was connected to Carmen's murder, his own death could have been retaliation, silencing, or an act to prevent legal consequences. Alternatively, both deaths could have served a shared agenda. For instance, financial gain, child custody disputes, or life insurance. Another possibility is that neither death was directly linked to the other by motive, but both were orchestrated by a third party with ties to both victims. This raises a central question: who benefited from both Carmen and Eric being dead? And why has that person not been investigated, publicly or privately? Were either of them under surveillance? Given the exact timing and precision of both murders, it's logical to question whether Carmen and Eric were being watched, either digitally or physically. Carmen was shot in her sleep, implying someone knew her routine down to the hour she would be most vulnerable. Her children were not home, suggesting the shooter had advanced knowledge that she was alone that night. In Eric's case, he was ambushed in his garage, a place where arrivals and departures are easily monitored. The suspect arrived at the perfect time and escaped without being caught or clearly seen. Again, the coordination suggests a pattern of stalking or reconnaissance. Were their digital activities, phone calls, or social media movements monitored? Were tracking devices placed on their vehicles? If so, who had the ability or access to carry out that surveillance without being detected? No public report from law enforcement has addressed these angles. If surveillance did occur, it has not been disclosed to the public or Carmen's remaining family. Were both murders connected to a third party or a silent collaborator? Given that both murders occurred within a short window of time, were similarly execution style, and targeted individuals tied to the same household, it is plausible to consider a third-party connection. This person could be someone close enough to both Carmen and Eric to have insight into their schedules, tensions, and vulnerabilities, but distant enough to avoid suspicion. It could also be someone hired to carry out the act for personal or financial reasons. The Halloween mask used in Eric's killing may not only have been for disguise, but also symbolic, a signature or a message. Such theatrical elements are rare in random killings, but more common in premeditated actions where psychological impact is part of the strategy. The silence from law enforcement around this possibility only deepens the mystery. If investigators believe a third party is involved, why haven't they called for wider public tips, anonymous leads, or digital forensic support? 2 lives have been taken. One mother, Carmen Denise Peterson. One father, Eric Pate Jr. They shared a family, a history, and perhaps unknowingly, a common enemy. Both were executed in their homes, within months of each other. Both cases remain unsolved. Law enforcement has released minimal details. No arrests have been made. No suspects have been confirmed. No motive has been made public. Their children, now without both parents, remain the silent witnesses to a larger crime that is yet to be fully uncovered. The lack of progress, transparency, and accountability continues to raise serious questions about how justice is pursued when violence intersects with personal relationships. If you have any information about either murder, contact the Harris County Sheriff's Office immediately. Keep the conversation alive. Share this case with others. Demand answers. The silence must be broken. Subscribe for updates as this story continues to unfold. Justice delayed is justice denied. Carmen and Eric's deaths deserve resolution, and their children deserve answers. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.